welcome to today's episode of The Flow. I am your host, Katie. Doc is at NAB this week, showing off all of the cool stuff, playing with all of the best gear, and I'm sure he will have tons of updates for us all when he gets back. But we wanted to pop up into your YouTube stream and out across your podcast players to introduce you to someone that we had the pleasure of meeting at PodFest just a couple of months ago. Her name is Kiona, and she runs an amazing podcast all about birth, childbirth. And I'm so excited to talk with her today about her podcasting process and how she got started. Please welcome Kiona to the show.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us. It's just so great to get to meet people in real life and then get to hang out on podcasts. I think it's just amazing.
No, yeah, absolutely. I was super excited to hop on and just to be able to talk about all the things.
Well, before we jump in, why don't you give us a brief bio on who you are and a little bit about your show, and then we'll dive into the story behind, which I'm really excited for.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Kiona Nessenbaum, and I am a mother of 3 wonderful little humans. I am married to my high school sweetheart, my husband. His name is Kumar, and I'm located in the Seattle, Washington area. So in the Pacific Northwest, whoop, whoop, PNW. And I have a background in birth work. I've been doing birth work since 2016. I am a birth doula, a birth assistant, as well as a former student midwife. There's a lot of nifty things behind that. But yeah, that's me. And I am the host and producer of the Birth as We Know It podcast, which is a podcast that's dedicated to recognizing the many different ways that birth unfolds. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, it's such an important topic. And I love that you are willing to come on the show, because I think a lot of times here on this show and just in general with a lot of the content we produce, most of the people we talk with are, performers, presenters, podcasters, marketing experts. So they're people who are like really comfortable with being on camera. They're kind of in the out in marketing. And so you have like such a awesome background, and it's such a deep, important topic. So I guess my first question is, how did you get started? Like, at what point were you like, this should be a podcast, this needs to be a conversation, I need to do this?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. The best way to answer that is I was slowly taken out of the physical birth space. And what that means is I wasn't able to be on call as much with my clients, and I still really, really wanted to be in the space of birth. And the unexpected thing that happened was in 2021, after I had my 3rd kiddo, I actually ended up becoming a stay-at-home parent unexpectedly in May. So she was about 7 months old, and I had no idea what to do with my life, because I was like, what do I do? I'm so used to just going, because as an on-call birth worker, you're so used to like dropping the ball and figuring out.
Yeah.
Right. And like navigating all of the ins and outs of like childcare, or like when you're going to be back and all of that stuff. So when I became a stay-at-home parent and I was not taking any birth clients, I was like twiddling my thumbs, trying to figure out what to do. So transitioning to being a stay-at-home parent was actually really hard for me. And then I ended up wanting to talk more about birth. I am so open to talking about birth with whoever wants to listen or whoever wants to share. So I always thought about the idea of creating a birth story podcast, because birth is such a taboo topic, and it shouldn't be. It's something that people take for granted and they don't talk about it enough. And when they do talk about it, it tends to be the horror stories or someone trying to give you advice on like, oh, this happened to me, make sure this doesn't happen to you. And that's meh. Like, that's not what you want, right? You want to hear the whole process. So that's when I decided I'm going to create a podcast. And so in March of 2020, I'm 2023, March of 2023. Okay. I was like,
math is not my friend, so we're not going to try to do that counting.
Yeah. So in March of 2023, I created and officially launched the Birth as We Know It podcast. And it was in the works for about 6 months or so, me trying to figure out how to even do a podcast. I've listened to a couple before. I was like, what do I what do I do? What's a host? What editing software do I use? And there's so many things out there. And so I was really overwhelmed, but decided to just get it out there and do it. So yeah.
I love that because I feel like that's what we say on the show all the time. We're like, if you have an idea at some point, you're just gonna have to get out there and do it. Otherwise, you can definitely sit through that kind of like paralysis with all of the options for a really long. It's amazing like how quickly the time will go by as you're trying, just sort of like, I don't know what to do. So it is important to take that first step. And I love it because again, like your topic is big and is like misunderstood and I feel like is in itself overwhelming for a lot of people, but really at its heart like they are stories. It is, you're telling people stories, you're allowing them the opportunity to be able to tell their unique story. And there's something I think really, it's almost like the perfect topic for a podcast because podcasting itself is all about storytelling and being able to kind of craft this really interesting journey for people to go on with you. So yeah, I think it's makes it a really interesting perfect topic for this particular medium for sure.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And, the fact that people tell stories on here with like on all podcasts in general, but when it comes to birth as we know it specifically, I'm making sure to not just get stories about birth from the person that's giving birth, but also from birth workers and providers and partners. Yeah. And so it puts that separate perspective or different perspective and angle to look at what birth is. And when you hear stories about birth from the person who went through the experience, you are putting the individual back into birth, like back into the policies and procedures that are put into place, as well as just back into the experience, because there's so many births that happen every single day. So they're taken for granted and people are just like, oh, well, you came out with a happy, healthy baby, like, good for you, high five. But there's so much that goes into the process of even just conception. So I talk a lot on my podcast about the whole thing. My episodes are quite lengthy, but they're lengthy for a reason, Yeah. So there's a lot of birth story podcasts out there that talk specifically about the birth. But on my podcast, I talk about the conception, the pregnancy, the labor and birth process, as well as postpartum, because there's so many challenges that pop up in every single one of those stages. So I think it's important to hear the whole thing rather than just hearing only the birth, which is important, but you get to the birth by starting at conception. So
absolutely. So how did you approach that as you were starting your show and kind of thinking through like what you wanted that experience to be for your guests and for your listeners? How did you approach breaking down like, okay, we talk a lot here about like, audio or video, how are you going to, what is the kind of format of the show and how do you approach that? I know we were talking in person about the idea where you're like, oh, maybe I want to keep it in the kind of audio space because of how personal it is and because of the kinds of stories that you are, not requiring, but asking of your guests to share. So was that like an immediate thought as you were getting started? You were like, okay, maybe I just need to be in this audio space because of the kinds of guests that I'm bringing on?
No, actually. So I did have the intention to potentially create it as a video podcast as well, because when you hear podcast now, it's usually both audio and visual. Yeah. And so when I started creating it, I was just like, I'm just going to start as audio. I can always change it later if I need to. I just need to get it out there and make it less complicated and just do the thing. And so when I started getting a little bit more comfortable with it and then started interviewing guests, I'm realizing that it may not be a show that's meant for video. And the reason why I say that is because I'm interviewing people that are like fresh moms, have like they're breastfeeding their babies, or they have like stains all over their shirt, just bun up, they're crying sometimes. So all of
There's
this
vulnerability. Yeah.
Right. They are so vulnerable. And I feel like it not being a video podcast makes it to where people don't have to feel the pressure of getting all done up. Like, for example, today I have makeup on and I never wear makeup, but it's because I know that I'm going to be on video, right? You guys
Yeah.
still get my glorious background of me being in my master closet,
Perfect.
but that's
Perfect.
just the struggle of being a fresh podcaster, right? I don't have an office I can go to or anything like that. So this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that was the reason why I decided to just keep it as audio, because I wanted to connect with people and not have them feel pressured to do or be a certain way.
Yeah. And I think it's really important for us to share on this show because I know that many of you listening or watching and those who are hanging out in our live studio audience, obviously, Ecamm is a video production software. We have a ton of podcasters who are using this platform. We're certainly video first, but I will say that I think there are a lot of instances where focusing on the audio or really thinking through like the format of your show, what's important to you as the host, co-host, guests, and your audience is so hugely important. And I love that you came on because I think that this is a great kind of different example of a show where it probably does make sense for you to, to kind of protect and keep it into being a safe space for people who are coming on that are in vulnerable moments, that are willing to share their stories and are kind of willing to be part of that show. So I just think it's a great kind of reminder that a lot of what goes into the format of a podcast is really thinking through kind of all of those different data points and what is really important to each of the people that are involved in the process, not just the listeners, but guests, but yourself as the host, potential of co-hosts as well. So I think it was a good choice for you. And certainly, like you said, you could at any point add in video later, but then that would probably require kind of a different kind of conversation with your guests, or how you approach booking guests would certainly change if you were to add that in.
Yeah. And I definitely created this podcast with the intention of making connections and having it be a place where people can relate on things that they thought they were alone on, or that they thought they experienced by
Yeah.
themselves or no one else experienced it, because there's really, like we already said, sharing your story in this space about birth in particular, even when it comes to pregnancy, it's a very vulnerable thing. So
Mhm.
on my podcast, the reason why I talk about conception is because there are people that experience loss before having a viable pregnancy. And
Yeah.
so when we talk about those viable pregnancies, or when we talk about those miscarriages and even a
Mhm.
viable pregnancy, it brings a different feeling to when you hear the rest of their story.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, this is a happy baby, like you're happy and healthy. It
Mhm.
brings the whole thing together. And I also wanted to say one reason why I decided to have it be audio only is because I have also offered for people to come on with a pseudo name or a
Mm,
pseudo, like, to be private, because
yeah.
they want to share their story and experience, but they don't necessarily want it to be turned back to them,
Mhm.
which I can totally validate and respect.
Absolutely.
Um, Especially when it comes to providers, like, I've offered to, like, if a provider in particular has had a really hard time giving birth or with conception or something like that, but their job is to serve that community, it's a very vulnerable place to be in, to say, oh, my entire birth experience, but I'm over here telling you one thing because of your birth or your specific,
Yeah.
pregnancy condition or something. And you don't want the patient that you're caring for to be like, well, you did this in your birth. So it
Yeah.
makes it a little touchy.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to it for sure.
Mhm.
How do you go about finding guests for the show? Or how did you initially start finding guests when you were just starting out? And how has your guest process kind of evolved as you've been doing it now for a while?
Yeah. So, just like anything, kind of like those three-tier marketers or whatever, like, you go to who you know first, right?
Yeah.
So I am active in the birth community here in the Pacific Northwest. So I
Mhm.
reached out to all of my birth people. So I reached out to, like, birth doulas or people that I knew
Mhm.
were parents. I reached out to my sisters because they had recently given birth. And so, I reached out to my mom and my stepmom and my dad. And I'm like talking to all these people. And I'm like, hey, do you want to share your birth? And that's how it started. And I guess that's the fun thing and the convenient thing about my topic is everybody has been born, like we've said,
Yeah.
but
Everyone has been through it in some way, right?
right, right. But
Yeah.
there's so many people around me that have given birth themselves. Now, if
Yeah.
they want to share their story, that's up to them. I just ask. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's how it started. And now I realized that I needed to have, like early on, I realized I needed to have a guest request form for people that
Mhm.
weren't connected to me. So if
Yeah.
someone went to my website, they could fill out a form to be on the podcast. And that form has also evolved over time. Like I
Mhm.
quickly realized that I needed to add, what time zone are you in? Because that's
Yeah.
really important. I've interviewed people that were in Australia and like 17 hours ahead of me. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to get up and do it. Like it's Sunday for me, but it's Monday for you. So what does that
Yeah.
mean? Um, so dealing with that. So navigating people to the guest request form is how I get most of my people now. But it's been fun. I've had some really awesome people that have like shared really uncommon experiences, which is the fun of it.
Yeah. Yeah. The guest process is so hard. Like it's one of those things where it just never seems all that difficult. You're like, oh yeah, I'll have guests on my show. But figuring out, how to make them feel really comfortable, how to set up a process so that it's, they know what to expect when they come on the show, they have the right time zone. Like there is a lot that goes into it that I think people don't realize until you start doing it. And it's awesome that it can, as in your case, like when you start with people that there's a little bit more leniency there of like it's
Yeah.
okay if they can
Yeah.
just call you and talk with you and figure out kind of the details. But as you start building out that process, it is amazing, like everything that goes into it. We have a member of our community who is just incredible at the interviewing process. And every time I'm on one of his shows, shout out to Kirk. Kirk Nugent is incredible at this. Every time I'm on one of his shows, he's got this like detailed process where like exactly when to show up, how long the show is going to be, like at what point different segments are going to happen, like how the repurposing is. And he's got this experience afterwards where once you're done the show, then he has like a private Zoom session that's just with like his kind of paid membership. So it's like you can stay on afterwards for that. This is what that looks like. So it is cool kind of seeing everyone else's process too. Do you get the opportunity to be a guest on many shows? Have you learned anything from like other podcasts guesting process?
I've definitely realized that I'm more comfortable as a host than the person being interviewed. This is fine. I've met you before. We were chatting before.
This is
But
casual.
like, yeah, this is super casual. But like, I have had the opportunity to be on a couple of other podcasts, and it's just so interesting to be in the hot seat, you know?
Mhm.
But when it comes to the technicalities or logistics that people present to me before I hop on,
Yeah.
it's kind of minimal, to be honest. I felt like I was over prepared, but that is saying that most of the time, like your prep for this podcast was super easy to follow, right? But
Yeah.
there's a couple of podcasts that I've been on when they just like, I didn't get any reminders, and luckily I had it on my calendar to show up,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, well, let me log in. Do I have a link,
Yeah.
so doing that was fun. But when I prep people for my podcast, I've started really early with making sure I had a guest request form so
Mhm.
that they could even find me. But then I also had them make sure that I had a podcast release form so that the audio is
Mhm.
automatically in my hands after, and they sign it and say, okay, this is good. You can edit it. You can do all the things. And I
Yeah.
also made sure that I added a photo release form because I require
Mm.
them to send me at least one photo that I can put in attachment to their episode. So it's for marketing purposes and also to individualize the podcast.
Yeah.
And all of those are attached to a very, very long, detailed email of information of how to best prep and why I need all those things.
Yeah.
So that's been an interesting discovery on how to navigate that process.
Yeah, and it's probably even more so important again for the kind of the content that you're sharing because people potentially could come onto the show and then change their mind or feel as though they said something that maybe they didn't want you to share later or didn't want their photo released. So setting that expectation up front, I'm sure is so incredibly important, and being able to kind of you know carry that through to make sure that they understand kind of what those expectations are and what that process is going to look like.
Yeah. And I've even had some guests that came to me and said that they were interested in being on the podcast. And then I sent them, like, we figured out a date and everything. And then I sent them my info email with these attachments. And they're like, whoa, this is really serious. Like, this is turning me off of this. I don't want to do this. And I was like, okay, you don't have to. I totally respect that. And
Yeah.
because one of them was like, whoa, this is too much for me. Like, this is weird. I don't like this. And then the second person was like, well, I appreciate your need for these forms and things, but I I feel like it's a lot because maybe one day I want to go back and say, hey, let's not share this because my kids might not want it when they find out that they're older,
Yeah.
that I shared their stories. And so I also give people the opportunity to either mention their children's names or to not.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to the titles of my podcast, you'll see that some of them do have the names of the children and some of them don't
Mm-hmm.
because privacy and respect.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm probably much more casual about that than I should be. I feel like I have like moments through my life where I'm like, oh man, as my kids are getting older, they've sort of grown up really publicly because of what I do, and they've been really comfortable with it at this point. But certainly as they become teenagers, they may have very different feelings about it. So it is interesting. Like I think it's one of those things that you probably don't really think through unless you are presented with language like that. Or it's I think a good reminder for people to be like, oh, wait, let me spend some time really thinking about this and making sure I'm making the right decision.
Yeah. It's hard though, because as parents, I feel like we always casually talk about our kids. And so
Yeah.
when we have to take that step back and like not mention their names, then
Yeah.
that's a little challenging. So,
Yeah. No, definitely. It definitely is. Well, so let's talk a little bit about the podcast again process that you went through. So you built up the show. You started with guests that were, friends and family and colleagues and people that you knew. How did you figure out what podcast host and when you needed a website? What about these next steps? How did you approach that?
man, so I actually approached all of those really early on. I wanted to make sure that when I launched my first episode that I had a podcast website. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not just talking about like the website that's attached to my host, but like a separate website.
Yeah.
So for my actual like podcasting hosting site, I utilize Buzzsprout and
Awesome.
I've loved them so far. They're super awesome. They also make it to where you can have a podcast like website through their
Mm-hmm.
hosting site. So I
Yeah.
have that, which is super cool. But I felt that me creating my individual website outside of my hosting site, I utilize WordPress and Bluehost.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Having those separate from my Buzzsprout account means I get to customize my actual website the way that I
Yeah.
want it to look. I get to make it to where people can see these photos I'm asking for. It also makes it possible for me to have an individual post page for each episode I have. So it's individualized. It gives me a place to put the transcript in a way that I like it to look. And I feel like having a separate website outside of my hosting site allows me to have a little bit more authority for a first time listener. It's not
Absolutely.
just like, oh, this is a hobby. It's like, oh no, this is like a legit thing. And it
Yeah.
looks really cool. And wow, maybe I can share my story. Like I want to pull people in visually as well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I started with that early on.
I think that is really important, and you're right. I think it's important for us as podcast creators to have that level of control. But I agree with you. I think it's really important too because it does set a particular tone to people who are engaging with your show and potential listeners that you're pulling in, and potential sponsors or people that you might want to partner with or work with down the road. So yeah, I think it's hugely important. And you're right. Your site looks great, and you definitely
Oh,
are
thank you.
projecting that
Thank
professional
you.
atmosphere. So yeah, great job. Great job on that. Do you currently do any kind of monetization? Do you have sponsors, or have you thought about
I
that at all?
don't yet. I've definitely thought about it. I don't have any monetization happening or any sponsors or partnerships happening yet. It's definitely been on my mind very consistently lately. And that's because this is running a podcast is a lot of work, you guys. Like
Yeah.
it takes so much time and effort, and I love doing it, but it's also So for the first year, I was doing weekly episodes. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a lot of work, lots of fun. But I have 3 kids and a husband. They have soccer practice, they have
Oh,
school. Like there's so
yeah.
much that needs to be balanced here. And so after that first year, I told myself, if you make it through a year of weekly episodes, high five, you did it. It's awesome. And so as soon as I hit my weekly mark, I decided I'm going to take a step back and do biweekly so that I have more time to focus
Yeah.
on the editing process and just
Mm-hmm.
putting in more effort towards making the episode better.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting because with my like in the first year when I was doing weekly episodes, I was the person. So my episodes come out at Wednesday. Everyone did come out at every Wednesday at 6 a.m. in the morning, right? Now it's
Wow. Awesome.
every other Wednesday at 6
Yeah.
a.m. But I would be up at like 4 a.m. hitting publish because I wanted to be consistent. I never dropped
Mm-hmm.
the ball. The only time I got like made an accident is I didn't hit publish, but I uploaded everything. And
Oh no.
so I didn't notice until like noon the next day because I was like exhausted. But
Yeah.
I realized at that point that weekly was not sustainable for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to go to biweekly and do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think thinking that through is hugely important. We've sort of gone back and forth a little bit with this show, and I have a personal like for fun podcast that I do, and
Mhm.
we joke on that show that we're like we release like every week maybe, and like some weeks we take off, and we're if you want to
Mhm.
follow along with us, here's where we are, and we're gonna pop up as best as we can,
Mhm.
but it's difficult to think through, what's the frequency, when to make some of those changes to make sure that you're really focused on your audience and on your content, whether or not to do, seasons or go all the way through. Those decisions are
Mhm.
difficult to make, but it's good. It's great to hear you say, and I think it's good for everyone to hear that you don't have to stay with what you initially decided to do. It's okay to make those changes if you're making them for the right reasons, if you're really thinking through, again, your listeners, yourself, and your own time, and being able to produce the best possible content. How is the every other week going for you right now? Do you feel like it gives you enough time to be able to do what you need to do?
I mean, it was
It's
definitely
never enough time.
hard to make that adjustment because I was still like trying to figure it out. And then I was like, oh, I have so much more time when really like it's just a little bit more time
Yeah.
and you're still working on it every week. But I started figuring it out. Like I started figuring out how to do it. And now I'm waking up before my kids to actually work on the podcast and I'm making good
Mhm.
progress, which
That's awesome.
is better than staying up late and waking up after my kids because they're like, Mom, it's morning. you know, you gotta wake up. I gotta go to school.
Yeah.
But I realized that I didn't actually touch much on the monetization part because I wanted to mention how I went from weekly to biweekly because going to biweekly gave me more time to focus on learning more about what sponsorships take and
Yeah.
learning more about what my monetization options are.
Hmm.
And doing monetization is actually quite challenging for a new podcast.
Hugely.
And
Yeah.
when you even go to look at like grants for podcasts and things, it's telling you that as a podcast, at least all the ones that I've seen, you have to be a nonprofit in order
Hmm.
to get a grant. I am not a nonprofit. I don't have time to be a nonprofit. I There's so many limits and things there. I love the concept of being a nonprofit, but at the same time, it just makes things a little bit complicated. So I've learned more about sponsorships and I'm hoping to find people that can sponsor my show, but that's a whole other avenue to learn about because there's not really any rules on how to do things. There's ways that people have done it before that you can use as guidance, but
Hmm.
there's not really like any set in stone, like the way that you get a sponsorship is this. This is the price that you have to say. Um, and is it going to be a flat rate fee or per download or all this stuff? It's all new to me and it's challenging, but I like the fact that I create the rules on how I want to reach out and how
Absolutely.
I want to do the things. So that's fun. It's hard for me because I have hard imposter syndrome still, and I feel like I'll always have it
Yeah.
just by knowing that my voice and the voice of my guests are being heard all over the world. It's just when you think too much about it, it's a little intimidating, but it's also just a lot of fun. So Yeah.
Yeah. No, you are. I mean, you're right. The whole world of sponsorship and monetization definitely still feels like the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
There is no, it's all like, I feel like it's all a little ad hoc. It's all, whatever you can negotiate and however you can position yourself. There doesn't appear to be any kind of set formula for it. I think so. I think you're smart to
Right.
spend some time to research it and figure out. I mean, probably again for your show and for the work that you're doing, you also are going to want to have the right sponsors because a bad sponsor could make just a huge negative impact on the show. So, um,
Mm-hmm.
being a little bit more
Yeah.
cautious than like this show, where not that we have great sponsors here for this show, but we probably have a little bit of an easier time kind of picking sponsors versus the kind of content that you're doing.
Yeah, it definitely adds a challenge because there are so many organizations or potential sponsors that are out there that
Mm-hmm.
may not line up exactly with like the morals of myself or the morals
Yeah,
of my listeners.
yeah,
So it's such a vulnerable topic that the sponsors and the things that I choose do
big
make a difference
difference.
on
Yeah,
the outcome of what's going to happen. So
yeah.
and I have many ways that I could take it. Like I could do products if I want, like because
Mm-hmm.
every new parent needs diapers, whether that's cloth diapers or disposable
Yep,
diapers, whatever that looks like. I could do diapers or prenatals or
yep.
supplements or all these things, but I am the type of person where I want to do all the things in my podcast as ethically as possible, which is
Mm-hmm.
challenging for me because one of the things I talked about with one of my good friends that I actually met at Podfest, his name is Scott Johnson.
I see him
And
hanging out
shout
here in
out.
the chat.
Oh, I think so. And then Laura Beck is also super awesome and has been giving me tons of advice. We have been talking every single day since Podfest. It's kind of crazy. Um, but they're awesome. But when it comes to the thing that he advised me was you should not be hesitant to add ads in mid-roll, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, I find it challenging because I feel like the topics that my guests are talking about are so vulnerable. And for someone to
Mm,
be talking about, oh my gosh, like I almost died on the OR table, pause. And let's learn about this pregnancy pillow and all
yeah.
this stuff. I feel like that's really hard, but I know there's a
Yeah.
way that I could do it ethically, but I just don't feel like ads are the way to go. But I know that if I want to monetize, I should really consider it because
Mhm.
it's it's something to really think about.
Yeah.
But then that's why I started thinking about other ways to monetize through like sponsorships and grants. But we're
Yeah.
just gonna see. We're gonna see how it goes.
Yeah, or I mean, maybe it's a membership as well or a community.
Mhm.
There's lots of ways to do that as well. I know that is difficult. I certainly have listened to shows where that has put me off, where like it's like a really deep, important conversation, and it's like, and we'll be right back, and you're like, whoa, wait, it
Right.
kind of sort of snaps you out of the like incredible storytelling that you're sort of
Mhm.
caught in this different world and pulls you out of it. But then, I will say it has made me switch over a couple of times. So now there are certain shows that I will only listen to now on Amazon because Amazon offers like some shows where they're ad free, and I'm like, oh,
Mm.
I'm willing to do that and move over to do it. So there are certainly some options. Scott, your friend Scott, is here hanging out in the chat, and he's got a great question for you. He'd like to know what's one guest story that you'll never forget.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Um, uh, Thanks for this, Scott.
I held back, but it's like such a good question.
No, no, that's great. That's great. So the first one that comes to mind for me is episode 51, where I interview Rochelle, and she actually talks about a condition that I knew existed but didn't know much about. And so
Mhm.
she talks about her journey of uterine didelphes, which
Oh wow!
means she was born with two uterus that have two separate cervix, and the process of
Whoa!
what that was like when first off finding out that she had that condition, what that meant for her body, what that meant for her conception journey, how her pregnancies went. Like we talk
Wow!
about, is it possible for you to get pregnant in your other uterus while you're pregnant in one? Like, what is that like? And
Yeah.
um, all of that stuff. So that's definitely one of my top ones. And my second top, there's two that I'm going to give shout out. Oh my God, there's like 3. Um,
Get out of here. Go back and listen to this
I
podcast.
know.
We'll be right back.
You gotta listen to it, because episode 22 with Anissa is incredible. It's a really tough story to listen to, but there's so much in there. She talks about and experiences like threatened miscarriages, and she ends up with an unplanned hysterectomy, but how she got there is incredibly challenging.
Wow.
And then, of course, episode 28 with Katie and Krista, where there's a surrogacy journey. So I talk about their separate experiences, and then we talk about how they got together for their surrogacy journey. And then, of course, episode 10 with Kendra, where she has her vaginal twin birth in a hospital and unmedicated. And so she talks about that journey as well. So there's a lot of awesome things out there. And if you have an awesome story you want to share, hit me up and be on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that you even know the episode numbers and can like connect those dots is impressive. I'm like always like, what episode are we on today?
Yeah, it's those are the ones that stick out the most. So I give shout outs to those ones the most.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, there's some great comments coming through here in the live chat. Tanya says, I just shared the story of loss with my daughters recently. Right space, right timing is everything. Thank you for creating this for women.
Yeah.
And we have Jill, shout out to Jill hanging out in the chat. Jill says, building that safe space. We need it as moms and women. So absolutely. I think it's so awesome. You hear all the time, like, find your niche, find your space, find your people. And I think it's just a really great reminder that when you're able to kind of line up those dots and find your voice and your mission and find the people that, that it will be your guests and your listeners, it can just be such an amazing, awesome experience to connect all those dots for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of fun.
Paul is with me. Paul's like, wow, she remembers all the episode numbers. I don't remember any episode numbers. Paul's with me on that one. And if you're sitting here listening later, we do this show. The format of the show is that we record live on YouTube. So if you're like, what is a live studio audience? That's our fun name for people who hang out with us in the YouTube chat. You are always welcome. This show is Tuesdays. We record live at 12 p.m. Eastern. We're currently on break. We're testing out this new thing, trying seasons. So similar to what Kiona was just saying, we're really trying to think through giving a little bit more time and space. For us, it's that we create so many episodes and so much content that we're like, oh, there's so many good episodes. But as I just said, it can't even, it's hard to kind of go through all of that and figure out like how we repurpose that. How do we use that for promotion? How are you promoting your podcast? How are you kind of thinking through how to build that audience and get in front of people?
Yeah. So in the beginning, I have struggled. So right now I'm struggling with this because in the beginning I was like, okay, I see that you get the most like action on social media when you post every single day. And so I was trying to post every single day and like schedule posts ahead and everything. And like, I just could not keep up. I couldn't keep up with posting every day. And so what I would do is I would get a soundbite from my episode and then I would post it on my Instagram, which would also go to my Facebook. And then the next day I would do definitions because there's a lot of terms and verbiage that's used in the conversations that I'm having that the general audience doesn't necessarily know. Like, what's AROM? What's, other things. Like there's so many things that are out there. So I make sure to like add that in as a definition so that people can kind of be up to terms of what is talked about. And the reason why these terms come up is because I'm also interviewing birth workers. So they know what the terms are. And when we're having a conversation, it's easy to know. But for a person that is not in that field to pop in and take a listen, they're like, what is that? So
it's probably hard too, because like you can't really like pause them and be like an AROM.
Yeah.
And kind of go into the definition. So
yeah, and I've tried to navigate that. And so if we go on with conversation, sometimes I'll ask my guests like, oh, so and what is AROM? Or AROM is artificial rupture of membrane. So then like I add it into and intertwine it into my response to their statement. But in addition to doing those 2 posts, I started doing quotes as well, like quotes that stuck out to me and put those on there. But Yeah, I'm about 30 episodes behind on putting like any posts up about those. I haven't posted like consistently, like as an actual post for a few months.
Yeah.
And I think that just has to do with the fact that like so much goes into producing a podcast, you guys. I can't say that enough.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get ahead, which is why I started doing bi-weekly.
Mhm.
Started to get ahead, or starting to try and get ahead by making sure that I have my episodes published in advance and scheduled out so that I can focus more on the marketing aspect. I'm
Mhm.
also working on creating a newsletter, which I know is something that's really important to have and a way to stay connected to your community. So
Mhm.
I'm working on that, but it's slow moving.
Well, you're not alone. I do really well with this show because I have a team helping me and because it's, produced with a company behind it helping, but I will say that that's probably one of my biggest challenges for my personal show is that I have similar to you like these kind of like content buckets where I'm like I do a movie show. So for me it's like, like a popular quote from a movie or like a top 10 list of movies from a particular genre. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that, and this day will be this, and this day will be this. And then the whole week goes by, and I'm like, well, I didn't post it all this
Right.
week. And now I'm like 5 episodes behind. Now I'm making like a list to catch up on the episode. So
Mhm.
it is really difficult, even when you know what the right things are to do and like what cadence you want or what the content is. It's still just the act of doing it for some reason is really hard. So
It
yeah,
is. Yeah,
it
it's
takes
extremely hard. And then there's that aspect of also trying to figure out another platform or
yeah.
thing to like schedule out your posts. Like, should I just do it directly through Instagram or Facebook, or should I use like Metrocool or Awesome Calendar, TidyCal, all
Yeah.
whatever. There's so many things out there, which just adds to the overstimulation of options.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as always, I am blown away with how fast an hour passes. We're nearing the hour mark. So is there anything else that we haven't talked about yet that you want to be able to share with people, specific to kind of your experience over the last year plus of being in the podcasting space? Anything that is good for new people to know?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is pay attention to the title that you choose for your podcast.
Mhm.
And the reason why I say that is because I came up on this situation recently where after I published and had many episodes out, I went to Google myself, and then I also went to Google like the title of the podcast and realized that there's also a documentary called Birth as We Know It.
Oh no.
So I was like, oh crap, like what does this mean for me? Like do I have to change my title? Do I not?
Yeah.
But then I looked up some things and found out that like since it's a standalone documentary, I don't have to change my podcast because they're two completely different forms of content.
Media. Yeah. Mhm.
But I wanted birthasweknowit.com, because I was like, oh, I could do that. And they had it and it looked pretty dead. Like it wasn't active or anything like that. Like it was like a poster basically with like hyperlinks going to nowhere because they were all broken and old. And so I reached out to the owner of the platform because they had one website that the link went to. So I reached out to that person and was like, hey, do you think you'd be willing to, give me this domain? And they were not happy about that. So
Oh no.
I felt a lot of pressure to try to figure out if they're going to come after me, because I was like, I'm putting
Yeah.
in all of this work to get this content out. It's super awesome. And Birth as We Know It was just the title of their documentary, but it wasn't the title of like their business. So
Yeah.
I started looking into what trademarking is, and if I was even allowed to use it and copyright and all this stuff. So I say all of that to say, pay attention to the title that you use and make sure that there's not another podcast like that, because there's times when you will have two podcasts that have the exact same or very similar title and you're taken to court and you are going to have to change after many years of work. So pay attention to that. That's
Yeah.
my piece of advice.
Yeah, that it is a big one. And it's so funny, like how many of us are just like, I feel like the name almost hits you before like the rest of the idea. So it, like we get really attached to those names, and it is difficult. The Flow is certainly a really common name. I think our official one is the Flow by Ecamm, which makes it a little bit easier. But certainly there are other Flow podcasts out there. And then my personal show, there's no other podcast name the same name, but there's a Instagram account. So every time that like people would tag us, it would be like another similar content to us Instagram account, which has been okay so far. But yeah, we may end up in a place where we have to make name changes or tweak it in some way. So it is super, super important to think through like the brand of your show. Like what do all of those assets look like? The copyright and permission for music, for graphics that you're using, for sound effects, for video clips, for, as you were saying earlier, for like what you're allowed to do and not do with the content you capture from a guest. All of these things matter, and they may not matter when you're small and you're still working away and you're, even a couple hundred episodes in, but they might matter down the road as your podcast starts seeing like a lot of success and you're really growing and becoming more visible.
Yeah. And that's how come I thought that it was incredibly important to create these forums from the get-go. So if you are in the beginning of creating a podcast or thinking about creating a podcast, set up these forums, and because they are contracts of release. So once you get that permission and get that signed, then you're able to own the audio, and they can't take it away from you 10 years down the line and saying, my son is 17 now and he doesn't want me to talk about how he had shoulder dystocia or something. Like you don't want all of the hard work that you've put into something to be taken right from under you. Because what if it's like your most popular episode,
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, no, I don't like it anymore. So it just prevents that from happening.
Yeah. Save those in a really safe space. We've done a few episodes on like file management and how to use like tools like Synology. This is the place, right? Get those up into a safe spot that you have those, that you can be able to reference them later.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of stuff is electric now too. So have that file backed up.
Have it backed up. Yeah. Because you never know what'll happen. Well, thank you so much for making the time for us today. I just so appreciate it. It was just so it was so great to get out to an event and get to meet people like you and get to kind of hear how people have been approaching podcasting, how long they've been podcasting for. So if I can say one thing to close out this show, it's so important to find your people. So if podcasting is important to you, go out to some of these events, or if you can't afford to get out in person to them, find the podcasting community or space. There's a lot of them out there to find people that can help you. Because as you were saying, and as we say, it's not easy. It's a long process and a hard process. So having people to support you and offer advice is huge.
Yeah, it is extremely huge. And that's why I'm so thankful for Scott and Laura, because we met at PodFest. Like if I didn't get out there and go to a conference, I would not be where I am with my podcast today. So it's super awesome to have them like in my back pocket on my phone any moment I need. So I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much for letting me talk about my passion and this fun podcast that I have.
Absolutely. Okay, well, one more time so that everyone can find the show. Give us the name of the show, the release time, the website, all the details.
Yeah. So my podcast is called Birth as We Know It, and it is a podcast that is dedicated to recognizing the many different ways that birth unfolds. And you can find me on Instagram at Birth as We Know It Podcast. You can also find me directly on my website, birthasweknowitpodcast.com. And I have a private Facebook group. If you're a listener, you can be part of the Baki community. And it's released every other Wednesday at 6 a.m. PST. So tune in. It's fun. Lots of learning going on.
Awesome. I know. I can't wait to listen. And as you were talking, I was like, oh, I got to jot that episode down for this friend. So I think it'll be absolutely great. Well, thank you so much to all of our live studio audience for hanging out with us as always, and for all of our replay viewers and podcast listeners across the country, across the world. We really appreciate you. If you are brand new to the show, you can find it flow.ecamm.com. That's ECAMM.com. We are also available on all podcast players and, of course, YouTube and YouTube Music. We are currently on hiatus, so we are going to be on break until the summer 2024, but we are doing special pop-up episodes to be able to share important updates and great stories with you. So keep an eye out for that. Huge thank you, as always, to our incredible sponsor, Captivate. They are our podcast hosts, and they are just great. They're a great team, kind people, and the platform itself is incredible. It allows you to build, as we were talking about earlier, a little website to kind of get you started before you grab your .com and bigger website later. It's got a lot of growth tools built within it. So it's more than just a host. It's really helping you to be able to get your podcast out to the whole world and to all of your podcast listeners. So Captivate, CAPTIVATE.FM. They are a great tool. Hope that you'll check them out. And from all of us here at The Flow, me by myself taking over the show, we hope that you'll join us and see us next time, or check back out this incredible show and check out all of our back catalog as well. But thank you, Kiona, and thanks to the fam.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll see you next time. I have to say this for Aiden. Flow Riders, out.